Here's a mystery. Spring, JUnit, Jackson, Hibernate, all created before you wrote a single line of your app. Somehow instantiate your classes, inject your fields, and call your methods. How? The answer is reflection, Java's ability to inspect and manipulate code at runtime, discovering a class's fields, methods, and constructors, and using them, all without knowing the class at compile time. In this video, the class object that's the entry point, reading and invoking members, setAccessible for private access, and the real costs and dangers. Let's go. Reflection is the ability to examine and manipulate a class at runtime, its metadata. The entry point is always the class object, and there are three ways to get it. From an instance with getClass, from the type itself with .class, or, powerfully, from a string name with class.forName, which lets you load a class whose name you only discover at runtime, say from a config file. That last one is how frameworks and plugin systems load classes by name. The class object is the door to everything else. Reflection feels like magic until you see where its starting point comes from. Before you can reflect on a class loader has to build the class object for it, and that happens in three phases the first time the class is used. Load. The class loader finds the .class bytes and calls defineClass, which parses them and creates exactly one class object, stored in metaspace. Link. It verifies the bytecode, prepares the static fields, and resolves references to other classes. Init. It runs the static initializer blocks once. The result is a single cached class object per class, and that object is the door reflection walks through. One thing seniors know, a class's identity is its name plus its class loader. So the same class from two loaders is two different types, which powers plugin isolation and also causes class loader leaks. With the class object, you can inspect everything. Get declared fields, methods, and constructors, read the annotations, check modifiers, get parameter types. Note the naming. The getDeclared versions return everything declared in this class, including private members, while the plain get versions return only public members but include inherited ones. This inspection is how Jackson discovers your fields to serialize, how JUnit finds methods annotated with a test, and how an IDE auto-completes. Beyond inspecting, reflection can act. You can create an instance by finding a constructor and calling new instance. That's how Spring builds your beans. You can grab a method and call invoke to run it dynamically, passing the target object and arguments. And you can grab a field and set its value directly. Every one of these is decided at runtime from strings and metadata, no compile time knowledge of the class. This dynamic power is the engine under dependency injection, or mapping, and test runners. Frameworks create your objects for you, and there's a right and a wrong way. The old shortcut, class.newInstance, is deprecated since Java 9 for two reasons. It only reaches a public no-argument constructor, and if that constructor throws a checked exception, it escapes up the stack undeclared, quietly defeating the compiler's exception checking. The correct form is getDeclaredConstructor, then newInstance. You can name any constructor, pass arguments, and after setAccessible, even call a private one. And crucially, if the constructor fails, the error comes back neatly wrapped in an invocation target exception, so nothing slips out unannounced. Call getCause to see what your constructor actually threw. Here is Spring's magic as 5 concrete steps. Step 1. Load the class object from a name string with class.forName. Step 2. Create the instance through its constructor. Step 3. Scan its declared fields for the auto-wired annotation. Step 4. Set accessible true. Then field.set to inject the dependency into the private field. Step 5. Your bean is ready. Every framework trick you've seen is some version of these 5 steps. Here's the controversial power. Set accessible true. Call on a private field or method and reflection will let you read, write, or invoke it, bypassing the private keyword entirely. This is exactly how Spring injects into your private fields and how test frameworks reach internals. But it's a serious tool. It breaks encapsulation, the very protection OOP gives you, And since the Java 9 module system, modules can forbid it, so deep reflection into the JDK's internals is now restricted for safety. Use it deliberately and know it can be locked down. This is the most important thing in the whole chapter, and most tutorials skip it. When you put @transactional on a method and a transaction magically begins and commits, reflection built that magic using a dynamic proxy. A proxy is a stand-in object that looks exactly like the real one, same interface, but wraps it, so it can run code before and after forwarding each call. A dynamic proxy is one Java builds at runtime from an interface with no handwritten class. Two pieces, the proxy class, the factory that manufactures the stand-in, and an invocation handler, your one method that every call funnels through. Watch the flow. Your code calls placeorder on the proxy. The proxy hands the call to the handler. The handler calls begin, then reflectively invokes your real method, then calls commit, rolling back if it threw. Your business logic never mentions transactions. That is literally how @transactional, @async, @cacheable, and Mockito mocks all work. And it is exactly why calling your own method with this dot skips the proxy, so the annotation silently does nothing. The number one @transactional bug. One note, interface present. Java uses this JDK proxy. No interface. Spring uses CGLIB to generate a runtime subclass instead. Same idea, both built on reflection. An annotation does nothing by itself. It's inert metadata, a sticky note. Something has to read it and act, and that something is a framework using reflection. But it can only see annotations that survive to runtime, which means at retention runtime. A source retention note is discarded by the compiler. A class retention note is in the bytecode but not loaded. Only runtime is visible to reflection. Here's a mini JUnit in 3 lines. Loop over getDeclaredMethods. Keep the ones where isAnnotationPresent of test is true and invoke each. That is how JUnit works. And real frameworks go further. They read the values inside, like getAnnotation of requestMapping.path to get the URL. The number 1 custom annotation bug? Forgetting at retention runtime, so your framework silently ignores it. Here's a question that stumps people. Generics are erased, so how does Jackson know a field is a list of user and not just a raw list? The subtlety is that erasure removes type arguments from variables, but the compiler still records the declared generic types on fields, methods, and superclasses in a class file signature attribute, and reflection reads that back. So getType returns the erased raw list, useless for the element type. But getGenericType returns a parameterized type, and getActualType arguments index 0 hands user.class, the element type recovered despite erasure. That's exactly how JSON libraries and Spring rebuild generic types at runtime. A few expert follow-ups. Since Java 16 and 17, the module system locks internal packages, so deep reflection into a closed package throws inaccessible object exception. You open it with a -- it opens launch flag, or an opens directive if you own the module. Can reflection break a singleton? Yes. Make the private constructor accessible and call it again, and you get a second instance. The clean defense is the enum singleton, because the JVM itself refuses to build an enum by reflection. And why are method handles faster than reflective invoke? Plain invoke boxes the arguments and rechecks access on every single call. A method handle is resolved and type checked just once at link time, so the JIT can inline it like a direct call. Pay the cost once, not every call. Why is plain reflective invoke slow? And what's faster? Method.invoke pays a tax on every call. It boxes the arguments into an object array, rechecks access, and the JIT usually can't inline through it. A method handle fixes this. You resolve and type check the method just once, at link time, through a lookup that carries your access rights, producing a handle. Then invoke exact is something the JIT can inline like a direct call, with no per call boxing or access check. Pay the cost once, not every time. Var handle is the same idea for fields, and it's the modern, safe replacement for the old, unsafe atomics. That's the performance answer in one line. Reflection isn't slow as a blanket rule, so let's put numbers on it. Orders of magnitude on a warmed-up JIT. A direct call is about 1 nanosecond, often in line to 0. A cached method.invoke, with setAccessible already done, is only a small multiple 2 to 5 times from boxing the arguments. But an uncached invoke, where you look the method up every call, costs hundreds of nanoseconds to microseconds, because the getMethod lookup, a string search plus security checks plus copying, dominates. And a method handles invoke exact, is near direct when inlined. The headline: the expensive part is the lookup, not the invoke. That's exactly why every serious framework caches its method and field objects and calls setAccessible once. Reflection isn't free, and knowing the costs is what separates a pro. It's slower because it bypasses the JIT's optimizations and inlining. It's unsafe. Mistakes surface as runtime exceptions instead of compile errors. And it's brittle. You refer to members by string names, so a rename silently breaks it and refactoring tools miss it. So the rule: reflection is for frameworks, libraries, tools, and plugin systems, code that must work with types it can't know in advance. In ordinary application logic, prefer normal type calls, interfaces, and polymorphism. They're faster, safer, and clearer. Reach for reflection only when there's genuinely no compile time alternative. Everything in this chapter converges here. For different frameworks, one toolkit. Spring component scans for a component, instantiates beans with new instance, injects it auto-wired by a setAccessible plus field set, and wraps beans and proxies for add transactional. Jackson reflects your fields and getters to read values, builds the object through its constructor, sets each JSON property, and uses getGenerecType for element types. JUnit finds the @test methods, instantiates the class, and invokes each. Hibernate reads at entity and at ID, hydrates fields reflectively, and generates a lazy loading proxy subclass. Once you see the recipe, find the class, read runtime annotations, create the instance, get and set fields, wrap in a proxy. Every annotation-driven framework demystifies at once. Framework magic is never magic. Here's what tutorials never explain about component scanning. Spring does not load every class on the class path to check for a component. That would run thousands of static initializer blocks and pin every class in memory. Instead, first it asks the class loader for every .class file under your base package, just paths. Then it hands each file's bytes to a lightweight bytecode reader, SM, not the class loader, which parses only the annotation table and asks, is that component here? No class is loaded, no static block runs. Only for a match does Spring finally load the class and create the bean. A giant app with 30,000 classes might load only the few hundred that are actually components. It's like finding plumbers in a phone book by scanning the listings, not calling every number. Now the mistakes to avoid, straight from the field. Beginner swallowing the checked exceptions, class not found, no such method, illegal access, handle them explicitly. Intermediate using reflection and app logic, where an interface/polymorphism does the same job safely and faster. Advanced caching nothing. Repeated method lookups are expensive. Frameworks cache class method field objects. Interview questions on this. Rapid fire. What is reflection? Runtime inspection/manipulation of classes via the class object. 3 ways to get a class object. Obj.getClass, type.class, class.forName. How does it auto-wired reach a private field? GetDeclaredField to setAccessible, true to set. Costs. Slower, no JIT inlining, runtime errors, brittle string names. Module system can block it. And what most tutorials never tell you. Frameworks cache reflective lookups aggressively. The per call cost is lookups, not just invoke. Method handle/var handle are the modern, faster, more type-safe alternatives to core reflection. Now, the part candidates ask for most, what real companies actually probe on this topic, based on public interview reports, not official statements. All product and service companies reported what reflection is, where frameworks use it, Spring DI, Jackson, JUnit, and its costs, performance, safety, broken encapsulation. Follow-up. Spring injects a private field with no setter. How? Amazon Google reported Reflection's runtime cost versus compile time safety, and why you avoid it in hot paths. Here is how the same answer is graded, from weak to excellent, so you know exactly what an interviewer is listening for. Question: how does Spring set a private field it didn't get a setter for? Weak, Spring magic. Good, Reflection, it inspects the class at runtime and sets the field. Excellent, Reflection lets code inspect and manipulate classes' fields methods at runtime by name. Spring scans for it auto-wired, finds the field object, calls setAccessible true to bypass the private modifier, and sets the value. No setter needed. That's how DI, JSON binding, Jackson, and test runners, JUnit discovering a test, all work. The trade-offs: it's slower than direct calls, defeats compile time checking, errors surface at runtime, and breaks encapsulation. Impress. Note modern frameworks cache reflective lookups, or use method handles code gen to blunt the cost, and that the module system can restrict setAccessible. Red flag. Reaching for reflection in application hot paths where a normal call would do. Your cheat sheet. Entry equals class object getClass /.class/ for name. Inspect getDeclared*, create new instance, invoke method.invoke, mutate field.set. setAccessible true bypasses private frameworks, module system limits. Slower / unsafe / brittle to frameworks and tools only. And the memory trick: class object equals the door, setAccessible equals the crowbar. Quick check. How does Spring set your private field when you write it auto-wired? Reflection. It finds the field object, calls setAccessible true to bypass private, and then calls field.set with your bean and the dependency. That's the whole magic. Quick favor. If Reflection clicks now, subscribe and turn on the bell, new videos and daily updates, every 1-0 to deep. Now the recap. Let's lock it in. Reflection inspects and manipulates code at runtime, and the entry point is the class object from an instance, the type, or a name string. You can list fields, methods, and constructors, create instances with new instance, call methods with invoke, and set fields directly. setAccessible true bypasses private, though the module system can block it. But Reflection is slower, unsafe, and brittle, so it's for frameworks and tools, not everyday application logic. That's Reflection completely, and it's why Spring feels like magic. That's Reflection completely. If it delivered, like, comment, and subscribe with notifications on, new videos and daily updates, every 1-0 to deep. Next up, annotations, the metadata that drives every framework. This is Codivora, engineering explained. Keep building.